Continuing our look here at breast cancer on the Exam Room podcast, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hello, once again. I'm the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We are in the middle of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign 2021, and we've talked about a lot of things already this month, but we have not yet had an opportunity to talk about something that 3 out of 4 Americans now are struggling with, and that struggle ties directly to their risk of breast cancer. And that struggle is also their weight. 3 out of 4 of every Americans is overweight. More than 40% fall into the obese category. And so to talk about the connection there, as well as exercise, help me welcome back the one, the only best-selling author, breast cancer surgeon, our friend, Dr. Kristin Funk. Thanks for being here again.
Oh, thanks for having me. Woo, happy to be here.
This is my wheelhouse, Dr. Funk. When we start talking about obesity and weight loss, I get all kinds of excited. And we know about so many benefits that come, whether it's reversing diabetes, lowering the risk for heart disease, even reversing that, just getting your health in order. That's great. I get so excited about that. But really, what we don't often get the opportunity to talk about is the effect that it has on breast cancer. So let's dive into that. Like, how strong of a connection are we talking?
It's pretty strong, and I got some facts to back that up. So I think the place to start is to ask the question, are you one of the 3 and 4 who is overweight or obese in America? And, you may feel like you're in good company, and nothing that we're saying here today about being overweight or obese has anything to do with fat shaming. That's always completely unkind, uncalled for, and wrong. But there is also something wrong for me as a doctor if an overweight or obese woman is sitting in front of me with a new cancer diagnosis that is 100% estrogen driven, and she looks at me wide-eyed and earnestly wants to know, how did this happen? I don't have a family history. Well, you got to think of boulders on the scale of breast cancer, tipping you toward or away from breast cancer. And the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign, which I invite all of you to take the challenge if you haven't, there's fun newsletters and tips. There's a grand prize giveaway and an entire digital goodie bag just for joining the challenge. But the challenge was created out of necessity. But the things that are in the challenge, there are 4 things, are in fact the 4 boulders, in my heavily researched opinion, that push you toward or away from breast cancer. So a boulder, in other words, is so heavy, tips the scales so pervasively that it no longer matters about the pebbles. Your scale's already tipped. So pebbles can be things like environmental toxicities. People worry about the BPA in plastic or the phthalates in cosmetics. People worry appropriately about hormone replacement therapy. They worry about the connection, mind-body connection, and emotional stress and what that does. And that all matters, but boom, if you have a boulder, the pebbles just aren't going to tip those scales. Now, if you've got your life fully together and you don't have a boulder, now pebbles can matter and tip you toward illness. So what are those 4 boulders? A boulder is meat, dairy, and eggs, processed foods, saturated fat, simple sugars, refined cereals, all the foods that you want to avoid. And lifting the boulder off is done by consuming a whole food plant-based diet. Another boulder, drinking alcohol. You lift it off by drinking a mocktail or water or green tea. Another boulder is a lack of exercise. You lift that off by starting to move more. And we'll talk about that today. And the final relevant boulder right now, boom, being overweight or obese. So does it matter though? Is the damage already done? If you lose weight, do you lose the risk? And what is the risk connection? Let's dive in with some slides, shall we?
I love this. If this is anything like the previous episodes, I mean, we're in for some quality data here, man. I'm fired up.
All right. I'm glad you are. So let's ask the question, who's too chubby? So if you're one of the 72.2% of American adults who is overweight or obese, you should know about it. Again, to incentivize you to realize, I'm 10 pounds, I'm 40 pounds, I'm too many pounds past my ideal body weight. You can Google body mass index calculator. We've got a handy one at pinklotus.com/BMI. You're just going to put in your digits, boop, weight in pounds, height in inches, and out pops your body mass index. If it is between 18 and 24.9, you are in your ideal body weight range. Actually, you can be too thin, and that has its own health consequences. So you might be underweight, but most people, as we just heard, 3 out of 4 are overweight or obese, and then 1 out of 4 is not underweight. Most people are in that group are normal weight. So, but being underweight is its own issue. It doesn't increase breast cancer though. Body mass index between 25 and 29.9, you are overweight. If you have a BMI over 30, you're obese. And if your BMI is over 40, you're morbidly obese. And we categorize morbidly obese because that group of people categorically has just an astronomical elevation in all sorts of illness that go way beyond breast cancer. Obesity is also 50% more common amongst our African-American sisters, and that has a whole discussion around it that goes well beyond the scope of anything we're going to talk about today. But one thing that is upsetting is that a lot of African Americans are in parts of our United States that are food deserts, and they don't have access to the fresh fruits and veggies, to the foods that are going to that have like a lower glycemic index and that are going to be more less calorically dense. There's a lot of processed foods and fast foods that is readily available and readily affordable to that community, which just is all part of the suppression that keeps our African-American sisters from reaching their maximal health. But with education and with programs in place, I do think we can dramatically reverse this. PCRM and I did two different online, you can YouTube it, seminars about Black women and breast cancer, and you could learn a lot there if that's of interest to you. We had some really fun panel discussions. Okay, moving on. Breast cancer. Oh, I guess you could put the links to the YouTubes below. Breast cancer and obesity. So what is the issue here? So we know from our last exam room podcast that 80% of all breast cancers are fed and fueled by estrogens. And we know that high estrogen levels after menopause increase breast cancer risk. We learned and know that fat converts adrenal gland steroids into estrogen via an enzyme called aromatase. So this all begets the question, do obese women have increased estrogen levels that increase their risk of breast cancer? Well, to answer that, let me tell you a study comparing weight gain in life to incidence of breast cancer. Here we have a relative risk person of 1.0. I want you to think about how much you weighed in high school and how much you weigh now, and do some easy subtraction and get that difference. So how many pounds have you gained or not since high school? If you've gained or lost 8 pounds, you are a null person. There's no change in your breast cancer risk. So super happy for you and your skinny jeans. I hope you have a lot of friends. I'm kidding. I'm glad that you maintained that ideal body weight. If you, however, have gained between 8 and 13.9 pounds, simply the weight gain alone has elevated breast cancer risk by 25% above had you just stayed in the ideal weight range. If you've gained between 14 and 29 pounds, you have a 60% increase in breast cancer. And if you've gained more than 25 pounds, you've nearly doubled your risk of breast cancer. So in point of fact, there's no question and no controversy that obese women have more breast cancer. They have more breast cancer recurrence. They have more breast cancer related death than non-obese women. We know that obese women are more likely to have larger tumor sizes and more likely to have positive nodes and a higher number of positive nodes. But let's cue the good news. A prospective study with 33,660 women followed these women over for 15 years, and almost 2,000 breast cancers developed. And what they found is that the highest rates of breast cancer happened in those who steadily increased weight over a lifetime. And the lowest rates were in anyone who just lost weight over a lifetime. So the more women lost and the younger in life they lost it, particularly if it were a premenopausal loss, the less breast cancer they got. But all the losers won. So I want you to be a loser. One of the ways to lose weight is to be careful of the company you keep. A very interesting study showed that if a close friend becomes obese, you are 57% more likely to become obese yourself. What if your spouse becomes obese? 37% more likely. Isn't that interesting? Your friends matter more than your spouse.
Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding? That is amazing.
Oh, yeah. So, pick like-minded friends that are interested in maximizing health and in maintaining an ideal body weight. I spend a lot of time on weight in my summit that's coming up live at Terranea, October 16, 17. And also it's available right now online, virtually. And there are coupon codes that I've written here. LBBC, standing for Let's Beat Breast Cancer 20 for 20% off the virtual, or LBBC 10% off the live. And portions of all proceeds go to PCRM as a donation. And I would love to see you there. And particularly in the weight loss section, I've got 21 tips on how to lose weight, including my metabolism mix, which is a blend that you make at home. I'm not selling it. A blend of 6 different spices that have been scientifically proven to either decrease appetite or rev up metabolism. And 2 tablespoons of that a day will help melt your fat away. You know what else can help melt fat away? Moving. So 25% of breast cancer cases worldwide are due to the deadly combination of obesity and a sedentary lifestyle. What is exercise doing? Based on the evidence, exercise reduces breast cancer by decreasing estrogen levels. Remember, cancer fuel for 80% of them. And it can help you lose weight via enhanced fat metabolism. It definitely helps you maintain lost weight. And it decreases inflammatory markers, all of the letter factory of like VEG1, like IGF-1, which is the big daddy, interleukins, IL-1 and 6, prostaglandins. All of these are lessened by regular exercise. And these inflammatory markers, when present, are really damaging your immune system's ability, handicapping its ability to seek out and destroy cancer cells. So exercise by way of that pathway also strengthens your immune system. Okay, doc, how much exercise is enough? This is a cool study because it's pretty doable for anyone. This prospective study looked at over 17,000 women, postmenopausal women, and found that those who simply briskly walked for 11 minutes a day slashed their breast cancer risk by 18%. If you put a little pep in your step and exercise 3 to 4 hours a week at moderate to vigorous levels, you have a 30 to 40% lower incidence of breast cancer over sedentary women. And finally, women who exercise for more than 4 hours a week at moderate to vigorous levels have a 57% lower incidence of breast cancer than sedentary women. So what I encourage women to do, if they're largely sedentary now, and let's face it, COVID has really exacerbated all of the risk factors for breast cancer: alcohol consumption, gaining weight, reaching quickly for that fast, caloric, fatty is what I meant to say, comfort food, and increasing stress. There's just so much going on in the aftermath of COVID, and we're still not quite out of it. But one of the things is people got used to not exercising, whether it was an excuse or the reality of like, I can't go outside, can't get to a park, can't, like in the beginning of the pandemic, that sedentary mode just sort of set in for a lot of people. And if that's you, start low and go slow. You just saw 11 minutes of briskly walking a day. That has a benefit. You just add a few minutes day after day until you're finally kind of walking with some pep and vigor for a solid 40 minutes a day, and you're golden. If you really want to level up after that, you could add swimming, biking, running, hiking, or any other activity that you enjoyed doing to the daily regimen, and you will be well served for having done so. Actually, I want to take a little stop here in the slides. And I want to ask you to do something for me, Chuck.
Yes.
Ready?
Yeah.
I want you to sit up straight, open your eyes wide, Fix your gaze ahead of you and slightly upward. Take a deep breath. And on the exhale, put on the biggest smile you can paste. Just smile across your face and hold it. Okay, hold it.
Hold
Don't
it.
let your posture slouch. Don't let your grin fade. And now try to feel sad. Hold the smile. Think of, dying puppies, slaughtered cows, starving children. You can't do it, can you? You can't feel sad. You can't feel sad. You can
No.
because what you're actually physically doing right now releases happy neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, and they override the sadness signal. And so we know this about sort of the mind-body connection. Like you're enraged and your heart rate speeds up. When you're nervous, you get butterflies in your stomach. The mind-body connection is something that people can see pretty clearly. I mean, you can ask any man who's had an erection, if you're watching a movie and it's scary and your like palms are sweaty and your heart's racing, you're like, why am I so scared? I'm just sitting here in a theater with some popcorn. Like, what's going on? But what you just did with the big smile made your physical state manipulate your emotional state. And I think that's so fascinating that all emotions result from how we move our bodies. So in my opinion, even though it doesn't directly connect to decreasing breast cancer, one of the main drivers, at least in my life, for exercise is just how it makes me feel. I'm just happier when I move more. And I think that one of the things that will keep women coming back and back to exercise once they get in the groove, so to speak. And it's literally the endorphin high, but it's also just knowing that you've done something so positive. Like you literally move yourself when you exercise into a state of appreciation and joy. So
I can dig it. Lace up them sneakers.
Right? I like it. I like it too.
Get at it.
What I want to transition now into is a pebble. It's a very common pebble that people throw on that scale, and it's called hormone replacement therapy. So is it safe to take? We've vilified estrogen. And so now what hormone replacement therapy is doing, it's replacing the estrogen that your ovary now has stopped putting out into your system. So is that safe or dangerous, neutral? In July 2002, a landmark study hit the press and the brakes because after 5.2 years, this study was halted because health risks exceeded benefits. The Women's Health Initiative, what they did was they took 16,000 postmenopausal women with a uterus. This is important because when you have a uterus, estrogen, unopposed, builds up, is pro-estrogenic in your uterus, which is going to build up a uterine cancer risk. So you have to take progesterone to shed that lining. Okay, because there's a difference with maybe the progesterone is part of the problem. So anyway, PremPro combines estrogen and progesterone versus placebo. So all these postmenopausal women are either taking PremPro or a sugar pill. And after 5.2 years, they called it quits because there were 26% more breast cancers in the hormone replacement group, along with more heart attacks, strokes, blood clots, and dementia. However, there were fewer colon cancers and hip fractures. So when this study ended in 2005, consent was obtained again from another 13,000 women to follow the breast cancer incidence. And they reported out an update in 2010, which said basically, you get the baseline amount of breast cancer happening in the placebo group, you subtract that out and you've got what you can attribute to the HRT use, right? And that amounts to 7 out of every 1,000 women on hormone replacement will get a breast cancer she would not have otherwise had. And then the math on that is 1 out of every 143 women on HRT. So when I give that stat to an individual woman who's like hot flashing her way to a divorce and totally miserable, she's like, 1 to 143, I'll take that risk. Give me the pills, right? And I want to say that makes a lot of sense until you realize that there are over 6 million women in the US right now on HRT. And so when you do the math on 143, literally getting a breast cancer because of that, you're looking at something like 36,000 cancers that don't have to happen. And that's a lot. So let me give you another update. So hotter off, it's 2019, the Hormone Press is a study, a 2019 UK study. It's not as rosy as one in 143. If you have a look, estrogen plus progesterone users, by the way, it's a meta-analysis over 100,000 women. It's using all types of hormone replacement. So we get to pull out the progesterones a little bit here. So all types of hormone for 5 years showed that the combination at a 5-year mark made 1 out of every 50 users get a breast cancer. And if you had estrogen with intermittent progesterone use, it was 1 in 70. And then if you just were taking estrogen alone, it was 1 in 200. So it does seem that the either synergistic effect of the progesterones plus the estrogen, or really the progesterone itself, is a big driver in creating these breast cancers. But the point I made about 6+ million women in the US being on combination hormone, leading to like 36,000 cancers, is, if you trust these stats, more like 124,000 avoidable invasive breast cancers. So when women ask me what they should do, it always comes down to an individualized discussion based on their personal risks for getting breast cancer, heart attacks, dementia, strokes, for colon cancer and fractures, their level of osteoporosis. And also it's really dependent on why you want to take it. Are you chasing the fountain of youth? You just want like plumper skin and thicker hair? Or are you really worried about something you're trying to treat? Like, what's happening? Because usually we can at least first try some non-estrogenic options to mitigate the risk that we know comes along with daily estrogen use. So we've got complementary medicine, acupuncture, Chinese herbs, both of which can be really helpful with hot flashes, herbal remedies. Menopause Miracle is something that Pink Lotus Elements owns. It's our company that has all of these products that help women through a tough time, including menopause being one of the toughest. Black Cohosh, Dong Quai, evening primrose oil, ginseng, melatonin, vitamin E, all of these have in studies some protective effects and remedies for mostly hot flashes, not Menopause Miracle, though that works on all 12 major symptoms of menopause according to the Kupferman Index. So hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, mood swings, mental dullness, itchy skin, thin skin. It's pretty masterful. Decreased libido. Now, if you're really miserable, prescription meds can really help. These are all hot flash medications: ergotamine, clonidine, gabapentin. My patients who are on tamoxifen or Arimidex, these anti-estrogen drugs treating breast cancer, oftentimes are prescribed these like right along with it. Like, you're going to get hot flashes, here's your ergotamine. I think that we can try some other things before we go to prescription meds. There's another list of prescription meds you might recognize as antidepressants: venlafaxine, paroxetine, fluoxetine. Body movement works really well. And I think people don't want to admit it because it takes effort on your part, but it's the same story that we just finished with exercise. You just kind of get into it and you start to really enjoy it and crave doing it. And it can have really amazing effects on hot flashes and other menopause symptoms. PCRM just published a study looking at how soy consumption, even with or without exercise, can dramatically reduce hot flashes and other menopause symptoms. Again, we've got this herbal that has 3 randomized controlled trials against placebo. It shows that over 90% of women have over 90% of their symptoms either completely fixed or now tolerable. And it's just a 3 Asian herb blend that's completely safe, has no side effects, increases bone density. So that's something you can definitely consider. And you can take alongside things like tamoxifen or Arimidex. I get a lot of questions about what's the right screening for me. A lot of this comes down to 2 things: your personal, your risk for getting breast cancer. If you've had a personal history of a biopsy that puts you at higher risk, if your family history is really strong, if you have a genetic mutation, that's going to be a higher risk category. And the other issue is your breast density, for 2 reasons. So let's have a look at this picture. You've got dense tissue being the lobules and ducts of the breast, making the things on the mammogram look like a white splotchy snowstorm. So density refers to the elements inside underneath that breast skin of yours. Those are the actual elements that will make breast cancer. In other words, fat, stroma, blood vessels, those things don't make breast cancer. And those things look dark on a mammogram. So the whiter your mammogram, the denser your breast, the more of the tissue you actually possess that can make a cancer one day. Enter the big problem. Cancer on a mammogram is always white. So the denser your breast, you have a higher risk for getting breast cancer now with more of those breast elements. And we're looking for a snowball in a snowstorm. A white cancer in a white background makes us miss cancer up to 50% of the time in the densest of breasts, which is a density level 4. On the opposite end of the spectrum, by definition, less than 25% of what we're looking at is a white and splotchy and dense. So that's a fatty breast. Then you've got your in-between groups. So only 10% of women have level 1 fatty breasts. And thankfully, only 10% of women have a level 4 dense breast, extremely dense breast. These words along the bottom are universally used in your mammogram report. It's doctor code. I'm revealing the doctor code. One of these 4 terms will always be on your mammo report to determine your breast density. That is the only way you know your breast density. They're like, oh no, I'm really dense, because they feel to themselves like their breast is firm and lumpy. You might be dense, but it's actually a mammographic call. So you don't know until you have a mammogram. So we've got 80% of all women evenly split 40-40 in level 2, which is not dense. They have scattered fibroglandular densities seen on their report. And 40% of women have level 3, which is dense, heterogeneously dense. So if you can do all that math, 50% of women are dense and 50% of women aren't. In the 50% that are dense, I strongly recommend that you make sure you're getting a 3D mammogram, otherwise known as tomosynthesis. If you think of your breast as a loaf of bread, which who doesn't, and you squash it between 2 plates and take a picture, and then you tell me, hey, Dr. Funk, pick out all the raisins. I'll see some raisins. But what if, this is what 3D tomo does, you took that, from your perspective, it's still just your breast between 2 plates and a squash and 2 pictures. But from my perspective, now I'm getting like 70 or more slices of raisin bread pulled up into the picture. And now, voila, I can see all of these raisins. So in point of fact, 3D tomo does find about 17% more breast cancers, and with 35% fewer callbacks for false positives. Like, oh, I think I see something, but it might be nothing. But now you got to come back and get stressed out and get more radiation and imaging and maybe a needle. So it's definitely superior for all the dense breasts out there. If you don't have access to 3D, or if your insurance isn't covering it and you can't afford the couple $100 it is to upgrade to a 3D, but you have dense breasts, hopefully your insurance will pay for ultrasound, because a 2D mammogram plus ultrasound is equal to, or in some studies superior to, a 3D mammogram alone. So you can do the normal 2D mammo plus a screening ultrasound. On ultrasound, the breast tissue is white, the cancers are black. So now they pop out a little better. I like, in my higher risk people, because of family history or personal biopsy, I like for them to get 3D mammo and screening ultrasound to mitigate the false negative rate that happens with either imaging study alone. And I like for them to space those studies out by 6 months, so they're never going a full year without some good breast imaging happening. That's for people who have a higher risk of breast cancer for any reason. If you're just normal risk, then you can get your 3D mammo once a year and be fine, or you can do a combination 2D mammo with ultrasound once a year, same day, and then be fine for the year. Another great tool for those who are at higher risk for breast cancer is breast MRI. It's great and then not so great, because there are false positives with this that then send you down a big rabbit hole. And MRI guided biopsies, MRI is the only thing seeing an abnormality, and that's what you've got to use to direct a needle into your breast. It's pretty much torture. Like, I've never had any patient come out of an MRI guided biopsy and be like, oh, that was peaceful. That was cool. I can do that any day of the week. Like, everybody hates it. So I don't like the false positive rates on MRI, but it is our most useful imaging tool, our most accurate one when it comes to identifying breast cancer. So particularly if you have a gene mutation, I do like to get breast MRIs depending on the mutation. Sometimes I space it out to be every other year, every 3 years, really high risk every year. The reason for the spacing is that there is a gadolinium injection, which was found in a cadaver study. I think it was 2014, to pool in people's brains. It wasn't like the study, though, was about dementia, but they did happen to notice that people with the most frequent MRI use during their living lifetime had gadolinium in their brain tissue. And I'm just pretty sure it's not an antioxidant. We don't know what it's doing there, but I like to limit the gadolinium exposure in those women. Finally, even the official like American Cancer Society guidelines is for women to not bother doing self-breast exams. But really, ultimately, the reason why is that it can create false alarms, again, throwing you into imaging that's unnecessary. And it's not proven to improve detection. But that's because women don't know what they're doing when they self-examine. So I hear all sorts of things like, it wigs me out to do my own breast exam. I feel all these lumpy and bumpy, confusing things, and I get scared. Do I really have to do it? Well, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but I did create a 5-minute video that you can watch. It's at easybreastexam.com. And I just detail out how to do a perfect breast exam. And believe it or not, I advocate that as soon as girls start having periods, they start doing self-breast exams. That's not because I think a 12 or 14-year-old is going to have breast cancer, but it is because I want, number one, for her to not get wigged out by feeling her own breast, which a lot of adults, when they first are like, okay, I'll try to do a self-breast exam, they're just like, oh, I can't do it. But if you started when you were young, you're like, yeah, this is the lay of the land. Like I get my breast drain. It's always lumpier over there or whatever. So the video is really instructional. You'll definitely find out a tip or two that you had no idea you should be doing when you do self-breast exam. And finally, my summary. So my Beat It breast cancer checklist is to consume a whole food plant-based diet that prioritizes fruits and vegetables, 100% whole grains and legumes like beans, peas, and lentils, whole food soy, ground flaxseed. I say whole food soy because soy protein isolate does not have any known studies to me that show that it can decrease breast cancer risk the way all the whole food soy, even minimally processed like soy milk and tofu do. Ground flaxseed, I want you to eliminate all meat, poultry, fish, dairy, and eggs, and minimize saturated fat, simple sugars, processed foods, and refined cereals. Get to an ideal body weight and stay there forever, keeping your BMI under 25. Exercise. I didn't talk about how much is enough. 5 hours of moderate exercise. Like if you can chit chat with your girlfriend while you're speed walking, 5 hours a week is maximal for risk reduction. Or if you're super sweaty and can hardly carry on any conversation at all, 2.5 hours a week. That's 22 minutes a day. You can do that. Next, minimize or eliminate alcohol. 7 or fewer drinks a week. Favor 4 ounces of red wine. I didn't talk about this, but just don't smoke. It's not good for you. I didn't talk about this either. Stress management techniques, 20-minute daily minimum. I want you to pray, meditate, do Tai Chi, yoga, guided imagery, focused breathing. We go through this in detail in my summit. I have a whole section on stress management and the incredible benefits of meditation. Everything I talk about in the summit, by the way, I tie in with science and facts and studies so that, you know, it's not my opinion. Like I feel like managing your stress is good for you. No, I'm going to show you it decreases C-reactive protein and interleukins. And in studies with people, their blood pressure goes down, their insulin requirements go, like it's amazing and doesn't take a lot of time each day. And finally, to maximize joy and minimize illness in your life, get socially connected with others, a 30-minute daily minimum. Okay, in COVID times, this no computers or phones or screens is a little more challenging, but always try to be with others in person, date night, coffee with a friend, church group, tennis team, uplifting online communities, a bridge club, you get the idea. We're meant to live in community. I want you to do a monthly self-breast exam. Now you've got the video to show you how to do it. An annual clinical breast exam, that means with a doctor. Oh, when should I start mammograms and when should I stop? All the societies have their ideas of what is best. It's all based on a cost benefit analysis, with cost being more than money. anxiety, time off work, unnecessary biopsies, etc. And you'd be surprised if you ask just women, like, how many false positive mammograms would you tolerate in order to save one life? Most women are like, 10,000, like a ton, like, I don't care to save one life, sure. But when you really are a statistician and you're charged with that question, the answer actually has an answer. And so it depends on what the answer is that determines what society says when to start. In other words, you've probably heard start at age 40, start at age 50, start at age 45 and skip every other year, stop at 74. These are all real recommendations. And some of those largely say it takes 1,900 mammograms to save one life. But others say, well, that's too many. It takes 1,300 mammograms to save one life. So if you're a 1,300 person, you're going to tell everybody to start mammograms at age 50. If you think it's okay to have 1,900 mammograms to save one life, you're going to start at age 40. Here's what I say. I side with the American College of Radiology and the American Society of Breast Surgeons. And I'm telling you, if you're at normal risk for breast cancer, to begin at age 40, don't stop and don't skip years until you plan to die in the next 10 years, which is admittedly hard to plan for, but some people do know if they're true. They don't have the longevity anymore, and they know they're not going to be alive in the next 10 years because any cancer you diagnose at that time is not going to take you down. So best not to fret over it and do the screening. All right, so that's the mammogram spiel. Plus, we talked about it, additional imaging such as ultrasound or MRI when indicated, and additional clinical exams like my high-risk BRCA carriers. They see me twice a year. And finally, if you're like me, you always go for the extra credit. So give back, smile, laugh, and love. I just want to remind everybody that my summit is coming up October 16, 17 at the gorgeous oceanfront Terranea. That is a picture of the real place where we are meeting, and I'd love to see you there. You can come with a 10% discount if you'd like, using the code LBBC for Let's Beat Breast Cancer 10. Or if you can't make it, but really, really want to hear me talk for like 12 hours straight, you can watch the online version at 20% off, LBBC 20. Both those codes will also give PCRM a chunky donation. So use the codes. If you want to read about the things I'm saying, I do have a book. It's called Breast, the Owner's Manual. I'd love to see you all join my entirely free online community where women are empowered. They connect with others. They get education through the Cancer Kicking site. I've got a kitchen in there with recipes. One of my favorite things about Power Up is Breast Buddies. This is a matching program whereby those who have already been there, done that with their breast cancers are matched with someone newly diagnosed, age for age, stage for stage, treatment for treatment, solely for the purposes of friendship and psychosocial support. LACE, the Life After Cancer Epidemiology Study, followed just under 2,000 women for 10.8 years and with early stage breast cancer. And what they found was that those who reported out low levels of psychosocial support and a lack of any religious affiliation were 57% more likely to be dead at the end of that decade. So I literally created Breast Buddies because not everybody has a BFF. Not everybody likes their family, but everybody can have a breast buddy. It's totally free. You just go in there. You're like, I'm 47, mastectomy, chemo, and like Match.com for breasts, OpPups, all the women that match you, age for age, stage for stage, and treatment for treatment. You can look and be like, oh, wait, she's got a 12-year-old boy. I want to talk to her because I want to talk about that. So anyway, join Power Up. I love it. I'll see you there. And then finally, we've got our online store, Pink Lotus Elements, filled with amazing products, many vetted by randomized controlled trials, and all of them vegan. And you'll find a lot of products to help deal with side effects of treatments. Finally, if you haven't taken the challenge, today is the day. Let's beatbreastcancer.org. We've got a 4-week challenge to help you along the way. We provide newsletters and fun giveaways, an entire digital goodie bag. The 4-week challenge means that you promise to do your bestest to follow a whole food plant-based diet, exercise more, eliminate or limit alcohol, and strive to achieve an ideal body weight. By doing those 4 things, you will maximally right your scale so that you are in balance and maximally reduce your chances of ever facing a breast cancer diagnosis or recurrence. And that is that.
It's a lot of information there, a lot of valuable, great information there. And as we wrap up here for the month, we put a bow on Let's Beat Breast Cancer 2021. A couple of questions for you. Obviously, the focus has been on women throughout the month, but specific to what it was we were talking about at the beginning of this segment, obesity. I'm wondering if there have been any studies on the correlation of obesity in men and breast cancer risk.
Right. And there have been, and there is a correlation between obese men having a higher risk of breast cancer than non-obese men. So there's a short list of things that increase breast cancer in men, but obesity is among them, as is Klinefelter syndrome, if anyone's heard of that, and having a gene mutation.
So basically apply the same principles that you were talking about here. A lot of that goes the same length here with us fellas in the world. And my last question to you is also something that we talked about in our first episode of the month. And it was one of the coolest things that I think you have ever said. If somebody takes all of these nutrition tips we've been talking about, they add exercise to their life, they get up, they get out of the house, they move around, they're eating well, how much lower could their risk be when you combine all of those benefits together?
80 to 90% drop in breast cancer risk.
Oh, love that.
It's the most powerful thing you can do is what you do every single day with deliberation and awareness. What is on the end of your fork? What is top of mind? What are you physically doing? What are you audibly saying? All of these things create a cellular environment that is either stoking cancer or choking cancer, feeding it or fueling it, feeding it or starving it, I meant. So these choices are so inextricably tied to health and illness, and they're all a choice. And that's what I love. That's what's so empowering.
80 to 90%, and that power is indeed in the palm of your hand. Dr. Kristin Funk, thank you so very much for everything, all the hard work that you're doing, certainly being part of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign once again this year. And you are just somebody to admire. So thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you, Chuck.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.